It's a danger. Say it. Minecraft is pretty much just putting some blocks together. But making your Minecraft world look amazing and pop is something completely different. Today, I'm giving you 25 or more build ideas for your Minecraft survival world that will increase the quality of both the aesthetic and the lore of your world. Which means, I hope, it will make it look loads better. Let's get on with it. If there's something in this video that you want, do let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear. And the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is paths. Now, pathways are not just a way to get from one place to another. Well, I suppose they kind of are, but they don't have to look rubbish. But they can be anything from the odd pathway block with a bit of coarse dirt to something far more complex. But what I think is really important is a path being fit for purpose. So my first really big idea is path transitions. So I'm out in the wilds of my world. The pathways are going to be almost non-existent. I've got just the odd path block, a little bit of coarse dirt every here and there. As I start to get into a little bit of civilization, I bring more path blocks. So we transition from a few path blocks into just a few more with odd little bit of packed mud. Let's face it, packed mud is just dirt that's stuck together. We've got a little step here coming up with some mud bricks, and then we bring in a little bit of gravel as we move into a little bit more of a civilized area. That gravel brings another level of colour. However, we're still living in some dirt, we're still living in some grass, we're still living in plenty of path blocks. But then I bring in some mud brick. We're transitioning again. But you'll notice I've also brought in a few little fences as well. Obviously this is getting close to some kind of civilization. And now there's stone. We're bringing in a little bit more stone, more gravel, and getting gradually more and more stony, more grey, and less muddy. We've also brought in some other little bits that I'm going to talk about. In comes some other big blocks, and we've got some moss in there as well, just to give it a little bit of character. Then we're turning from these fences that we had before into some walls, and then we've got another path that turns into a proper road, made exclusively of stone brick variants, cobble, stone bricks, stone, gravel, that kind of thing. So you can see your pathway should match what it's being used for. If it's coming into some kind of civilized area, a town, a village, you need to change it up from just a few little path blocks. You need to make it fit. That is a 7-stage path transition. I think it works beautifully from coming out from the wilderness into a town. Although every single stage deserves some bushes. You can never have too many bushes. Now, I mentioned it a few seconds ago, but bringing in a bit of lore to your build is a good idea. This milestone saying how far it is to the next town is always a really good plan. Any little points of interest like this always add to the aesthetic of your world. And when you get closer to a settlement, you're going to want to get some lampposts, especially inside the settlement. This is a really wooden, rustic one. We've got a wood block there with a stone wall. We've got a fence, 4 trapdoors with a slab of wood there, 4 lamps. Really easy to do and repeat that with very few resources. And then this one here is a little bit more stony, perhaps a little bit more at home inside or just outside a settlement. A block of stone brick with some buttons on it, wall, fence and wall again, but up the top there we've got a hopper making the connection, we've got a slab on the top, and we've got 4 of those trapdoors making sure that it doesn't show the hopper too much, but one of them flapped up with a little lantern on. To add some points of interest along your country roads, bring in some abandoned campsites. This one has got a fire pit, 3 of the 4 logs are still there, but the 4th one is completely burnt down into a coal block. We've got logs that they sat on whilst they were around the fire in the night time. We've got barrels. We have got a tent with a sleeping bag still inside it. I wonder if these guys got chased off by mobs. These are really quite simple to put together. It's a little bit of a path going around a few stone blocks, putting some campfires that are extinguished, sticking a cauldron, flap some trapdoors over it, putting a composter, some bushes, and Bob's your uncle, you've got yourself an abandoned campsite. Custom trees are also a great way of getting some life into your landscape. They look so much better than normal trees. And I've got 4 different options for you to choose from. The first one's really simple. Oak logs, a few spruce stairs and the odd spruce fence post as well. Once you've got the fence posts in at the top, make sure that you put leaves around all of those fence posts. That will give you a really interesting asymmetrical shape. And that symmetry is further growth by adding different length chains, which gives it a much more natural look. The second custom tree is more like a willow tree with these fingers dropping down from the canopy. However, it is still very, very similar. However, we've also added a few trapdoors, spruce trapdoors, in a few places just to give a little bit more texture to that bark. I have also put a water bucket underneath the trunk of the tree, which has allowed me to irrigate all around it and put in a little bit of wheat. It just gives a little bit more colour. More structure at the top means we can have a bigger canopy, and I've also put these flowering azalea leaves in there as well to give it some extra colour and a bit more texture. The custom spruce tree is nothing more than spruce log going up in a straight line with some logs coming off just one block underneath, and some spruce fence posts. I've also put in some stairs and some trapdoors at the bottom just to give the foot of the tree a slightly bigger feel. But then it goes up in a standard diamond. You can see I've just placed leaves around in a diamond circle at the bottom, put up a level ever so slightly smaller, left a gap, and then come up a smaller level, left a gap, smaller level, and so on and so forth until we get to the top. And it actually makes for a really gorgeous looking pine tree. And then finally we've got a poplar tree. That is just a fence post going up in a straight line, about 9 posts, coming out just one level here, and then putting leaves all around each side. It needs to be fairly straight up and down. You don't want it to be too fat at the bottom, otherwise it will look uneven. Poplars are very straight and thin. Maybe add some history off of your path. Here we've got an overturned cart made of simply trap doors, nothing more. These trapdoors are resting on the ground. These trapdoors here are flapped up to form the base of the cart, and also these oak trapdoors give a nice wheel effect. All these bits and pieces have just fallen out of the cart, and it just looks like it's been abandoned. Any little detail like that just adds more to your world's story. Another great idea is to make natural cave entrances look like they've been exploited by miners, and yet ever so slightly overgrown that they've not been used recently. Inside here, I've got some support beams just made out of oak logs. I've put some trapdoors on the roof so as it looks like that's been lined up. I put in some smelting area here with furnaces and blast furnaces, a little bit of crafting, and plenty of storage, but with barrels so as I can embed them into the wall. You can create different looks using these leaves, these steps, and also different types of block. We've got andesite, we've got cobble, we've got stone here. I've kept away from stone brick because that's more man-made. This looks like it's been excavated out of the mountain. As we go down, I've placed in some coarse dirt, put some ferns on there so as it looks like it's been overgrown. I've left some of the ores in the walls because it makes it a little bit more interesting. We've got some water and also some wheat planted up there for some different colour. I've lit it up, but not too much, so it still looks like it's a cave. And at the bottom, we've got a ladder going into this natural cave here. Ponds and water features also make a massive difference to your world, not just in your base or the surrounding area, but out in the wilderness as well. This one is literally just a hole in the ground. I've lined it with coarse dirt and some gravel. I've put in some bone meal, some sea pickles, and also some lily pads, although you don't have to put the sea pickles in. That's just an extra little bit of light. You could put some light around it. These fences here with some lamps on have got plenty of light to stop anything spawning inside it. I have, however, used the water from this pond to irrigate some farmland so as I can grow up some wheat. Again, it gives some much different colour and makes it a lot more interesting, as do these haystacks. And when you combine the yellow from the haystack, the green from the bushes, the blue from the pond, and the brown from those fence posts with a little bit of light, it makes for something really interesting that would work in your base or literally anywhere in your world as you're travelling around in it. And you can do a much larger pond as well. This one is surrounded by stone and dirt blocks and is a much bigger hole. It's still lined up with gravel, coarse dirt, but this time I've also put in some slabs and some steps just to soften up those edges because it is a much bigger hole. This one is decorated up not with wheat like the last one, but with flowers and also some sugar cane. I put some bulrushes here using some green glass and some brown candles on the top that work absolutely perfectly for that. And we've also got a bit of a waterfall, a natural water source coming out of that block at the top off of this naturally formed rock. Well, I say natural, it's natural after I built it. Which brings me to something else you might want to consider. Rocky outcrops. I know, it doesn't sound quite right, but trust me, these things make a huge difference to your world. If you look around moors and plains in the real world, it's not just grass, you've got rocks sticking out of the ground as well. And I've got 4 different designs you might want to think about. This first one's quite small. We've got some steps, we've got some slabs, and we've got a couple of blocks. There's literally very little to it. But as a result, it's given an extra feature on the landscape that draws your eye. This one's much bigger and incorporated in a little bit of coarse dirt so as it doesn't grow grass over it, and put some grass on top of it that I got with some shears. It's exactly the same. Stairs, slabs, blocks, using andesite, cobblestone and stone. Do avoid stone bricks for these because they're man-made and these are natural rocks. The third one's been adjusted a little with some man-made fences. We've lit it up and it's a bit overgrown with some more bushes. However, again, it is just slabs, cobblestone, stone, andesite, and a few steps. But what you got to remember is that you don't just get rocks in the middle of fields, you get lots of rocks on the shore. So our fourth rocky outcrop is this rocky shore. It's still structured in the same way: cobblestone, stone, andesite, slabs and steps. This time, however, I've used a little bit of the mossy cobblestone as well, just to give it as if it's got some moss and some weed stuck onto the rocks. I've waterlogged a few steps in there so as we've got some rock pools, and I think the texture works really well. If you were to lay this all along the shore, you'd have a very, very natural looking shoreline. I've added some bushes so as it looks even more natural, but we have put some lights on it too. That way, when you're coming in on a boat, you'll be able to see the shore. Wait a minute. Did I just say boat? What a transition that was to the boats. I've got 3 boats to show you. Really simple designs, however. Don't get too excited. This one is an oak boat. It's just a small shipping boat. It's got a sail on it. It's got a mast. It's got a light on top of the mast. This is just literally made out of some fence posts and some wool. I put a button at each end so as it looks like it's rolled around a post. We've got some trapdoors in here so we can load and unload as necessary, and lights at both ends so it knows where it's going. Next up, we've got a tiny little spruce trireme, and this one's got a sail that is made out of banners, which I think works quite well actually. We've got 2 lights at the top so people can see it, but this is literally just a load of trapdoors around a single row of blocks with some stairs at the front and at the back, so it makes for a great little boat just for a small one-man band. We've got some rudders underneath it so as it doesn't tip over. And then we've got a much larger trader's vessel here, storing its oars, its barrels, and even a barrel of water there in that one. It's much wider, it's going to have a lot more to store, and as a result it's got 2 sails. The front sail, again made out of banners. I put more banners to make the sail slightly larger, but it is still just a mast made out of fence posts with a light on top. And then we've got our larger sail. It's furled there at the bottom. I know sometimes you can furl a sail at the top. I don't care. I furled mine at the bottom. Buttons there to represent how it's been held in place. And at the top, we've got a flag. Top of the mast. This mast is a lot more sturdy. Some strip spruce there going all the way up to the top until we've got our flagpole there, and it's spread out sideways using more fence posts just to give a little bit of wiggle for that sail to be able to pull up. For harbours, rivers, lakes, or even the open sea, you can do all kinds of boats, and it gives a lot more life to your world. Let's look at 2 other ways to use water now: a fountain and a well. Now, fountains don't always have to be in a town centre, but often that's exactly where you'll find them. This one is literally a tower of stone walls with a little end rod at the top just to give a little bit of light. I've then put in some steps and some slabs to make sure that this water here is kept in this very specific shape that goes down into this holding area at the bottom. We've got dryness in there with those slabs too, which has been held in place, but we do have light going up that way. Trimmed with stone brick, it's really, really simple, and you could change the palette for pretty much any block. Quartz works really well for this type of build. And as for complexity, make it more flexible, put in more water sources, put in more slabs and stairs to make sure that you've got the water going exactly where you want it to.
This is our Costia collection for Polar. It has this really pretty engraving and coining detail on the handles.
Welds can be a lot more simple. This is just a 3x3 square stairs, and then we've got a wall, a fence post and a wall going up to a diamond shaped roof. I've suspended a quadrant which has got water in it by a chain over a hole that is fairly deep, don't fall down it, you won't be able to get out, and a light just on one side to add to some asymmetry. Again, too much symmetry in the world is a bad thing. A little bit is great, but if you make everything symmetrical, it just looks odd. And speaking of walls, yeah, I know, I wasn't speaking of walls, but I had to get into my walls somehow, didn't I? We've got this stone wall, and all this is steps, slabs and blocks placed so they are 2 blocks high, which means that they can't be attacked by, oh, that one's not though, but I missed one. Can't be attacked by mobs. Mobs can't get over them, so they're quite good just to roam around the countryside, literally going uphill, down dale. It makes for quite a nice texture if you mix in a little bit of cobblestone, a little bit of andesite and a little bit of stone. And this time, because obviously it is man-made, you could also put some stone brick in there as well. But you can make these all kinds of interesting shapes and sizes. You can make them taller, you can make them wider. They work really, really well just to separate areas in your world. And if you don't like stone, What about a palisade? All a palisade is really is a load of wooden logs upended and sticking up out of the ground. Don't do them in a straight line because they won't look so good. Make sure you go in and out so you've got a little bit of depth and texture there. Strip some of them, don't strip all of them. Put a button on them, but put the button the same number of blocks from the top on each and every one, so the buttons go up and down. This one is on the second block from the top on every one of these things. And we've got walls and fences kind of scattered across the top with lighting. You don't have to add the lighting if you don't want to. And at the bottom, we've added some slabs and some steps, just because these are rocks. This isn't just going to come straight out of the ground. It needs to have a little bit of structure, and I think that works really, really well. Obviously, with a little bit of bushes. And whilst you're thinking, these could probably have a video for themselves. It's really important to keep your Minecraft world looking fantastic are the walls around your structures and your bases. So I'm going to show you 6 wall designs. First up, 3 in wood. And this first section here, and bear in mind, any of these can be repeated for as long a wall as you like. This one is pretty simple. We've got some oak struts, we've got spruce coming out to give some depth, we're using buttons. We've also got a window. I'm not using glass here, I'm using fence posts to give that kind of old-fashioned medieval rustic look, and we're using trapdoors as windows. This one is super simple, but when you build it up across a number of sections, it looks absolutely fantastic for a large house. This second section's got more detail. I brought in a barrel between the 2 window sills, and the window sills are now grey stone brick. It just gives another dimension, I think. We've brought the overhang out ever so slightly more, and we've incorporated things like bushes to give it a little bit of a natural feel. And this design could work for an exterior wall of a building, but also maybe a wall that goes around a village. And then finally, this has got a lot more depth. We've used some composters in the struts here just to give a different type of texture. 2 barrels, not as barrels necessarily, although you can use them as storage, just to add some extra dimension to the inside of those struts. We've done an extra internal level, so we've got a wall that is too thick behind there. That gives even more depth to this build. And this would definitely work as an exterior wall to a town. I recommend that. If you're going to use it for a building, remember the building has to be quite big because you've got a very thick wall there. But sometimes you need your walls to be stone. So here's 3 stone wall options. This is a really simple stone wall right here. We've got normal stone brick with mossy stone brick as well towards the bottom. And then as we go up, we've got andesite and some stone just to give a bit of a gradient. This is really an internal wall, I think. We've got a barrel there for storage, and then we've got across here, we've got shelving that's made out of these trap doors. I really quite like the way that works. You could put things on the trap doors as well if you want, rather than put the lanterns on those posts. Perhaps you could put the lanterns on there, or put in some pots with some flowers if you wanted to, although that's probably out of place on what's probably an inside of a castle wall. At the top, we've crenellated it up with upside down steps and right way round steps to give that kind of indented effect. And the crenellation continues right across the top. The second one could actually be the external side of the first one we looked at. We've got vines growing down over the window, we've got storage in barrels, but really they just add a little bit more differentiation of colour more than anything. We've got a few lamps, some on some posts, some on top of those barrels, and then we brought in a little bit of cobblestone just to change up the way it looks, because otherwise that stone brick is going to feel very flat. And then finally we've got some additional detail. This has got a 2 deep wall, lots of extra depth, so it needs to go on a much larger building, I think. This could be internal or external, but perhaps lends itself to internal just a little more, with a hanging down lantern using a chain. We have also got a barrel and a cauldron there full of water. The shutters are on the inside, but the shutters could also be on the outside. The window is 3 high rather than 2 high, almost like an arrow slit there. We brought in some black stone buttons just to change up the colour just a little bit, and we've got some carved stone brick in there as well. Again, it gives a different texture and it's much more pleasing to the eye. Incorporated a little bit of flat stone there in slabs, and it just gives a really nice looking shape. Don't underestimate the importance of the walls of your buildings and your structures, because I'm telling you now, I promise it will make a massive step change in your builds. And it's all very well me showing you these things in isolation, but it's when they all come together that really make an impact. Very recently, I did a village transformation video and used a lot of these ideas inside that. There's a link to how I did this and also how to get the world download for it in the description below if you want to go and check it out. But I incorporated a lot of the ideas that I've been talking about for the last few minutes. Like this path transformation that we've got here. I come from the outside through the gate into the inside, and we've changed up the path block. What I did here was actually increase the amount of path rather than decreasing it, and then when I got further into the village, I put a lot more grey into it again, so we've got that transition. At the side of the path, I brought in some water feature. We've got a harbour with boats out there floating ready to drop their wares off, and I placed the rocky outcrops along the edge just to show that it is not just a flat grass base. There's a number of custom trees which add a bit of character. The town centre has a fountain specifically designed for it, but we did also put in a little well, and at the other end of the town we added more rocky outcrop against this second harbour with a crane, again specifically designed for this build, with lots of different wall designs as well that have got plenty of depth. And whilst each thing in isolation is pretty good, when it all comes together, I have to say I'm pretty proud of what I made here. But it all came down to just using a few little different details, rocky outcrops, water features, walls, that type of thing, just to give more character and to make it look more natural. I really hope you got some great ideas out of this video that you can put into your survival world, and don't forget to let me know in the comments below if that's true, and perhaps even send me an image through my Discord, through on Instagram or in Twitter. You choose which way you want to do it. I would really love to hear from you. We'll call that there until the next ideas video. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. You take it easy now. Bye.
When you go rogue, a top 20 playlist doesn't set the mood. You do. Rogue nicotine pouches. Great taste. No compromises. Go rogue.
Everyone loves a crop farm, right? But they can look a bit dull. Maybe just a square with some wheat in it, or maybe a tower of rectangles, or part of some crazy skyscraper complex. Surely we can make them look better than that. And by better, I mean in keeping with their surroundings, so they don't look like one standalone build right in the middle of whatever else it is you're building. So today, I'm going to show you 5 great ways you can grow your crops in a way that looks natural or as part of your existing builds, meaning you get your wheat, your carrots, your potatoes, and even your beetroot, whilst your world looks fantastic and authentic. Now, it's worth mentioning that these crop farms and displays are all designed to be manual. If you'd like a similar video with automation, then just let me know in the comments below, and if there's enough interest, I'll look into that. And while you're down there, make the like button and the sub button really happy by giving them a little click. It really helps out the channel and it costs you absolutely nothing. So let's get on with it, shall we? And the first idea is pretty basic, but it's still really effective. We've simply grown our crops in an enclosed field, and we've got carrots, wheat and potatoes in 9x9 squares, and a waterlogged slab in the centre square with a light on top. In the centre, we've got kind of a barn setup. It's open on all sides, and we've got chests, barrels, and also hay bales in there looking like it's all for storage. Scarecrows on the corners are made out of hay bales, fence posts and jack-o'-lanterns, but I felt 8 jack-o'-lanterns would be too much, so we just got fences with lanterns on top on the other ones. Each field is separated by a pathway with a gate at the end, which means you can access all areas from every single side of the farm here. Now, I know people will say, well, that's not really a farm, Avo, it's just a few fields. Well, yeah, you're right, but it's very natural and it would work into your base. And you can sow it with any crops you want and make it as big as you want too. And whilst I completely agree, it is simple, but it's also super adaptable, so you can make it fit with a stony theme by changing up the walls instead of fences. You can do singular crops, you could even do pumpkins and melons. Change it up however you'd want. It's really, really easy to make it your own. And that is why I made it my first crop design. The second design is completely different. In fact, it's something you can integrate into your house. It's a multi-level farm that only uses a single bucket of water. This one has got 3 5x5 crop squares, but you could make this as tall as you wanted. A single bucket waterlogs a stair at the top, and the water flows all the way down each level through holes in the middle of each field until it hits the hole on the bottom level. I made this one out of wood, but it would work equally well made out of stone or even a mixture of the two. And I've tried to make it look like it would fit beautifully on the side of a larger house. Imagine the wall at the back is actually your house wall, and this is literally sticking off the edge of it. Getting up to each level is really simple by using this ladder. You can climb up to the second and also the third levels, and when you're on the under levels, you're not able to jump up and down, which means you can't ruin your crops. It'll always remain hoed. And obviously you can path around the outside and stick in some bushes and some chests for storage as much as you'd like. I've actually used this style before, and it doesn't have to be a 5x5 square. As long as none of your farmland is more than 4 blocks away from the water in the middle, it's going to work beautifully. I'd be really interested to see how you adapt this, so maybe tag me on Instagram or on Twitter and let me know what you've done by posting a picture. So options 1 and 2 were man-made structures. Options 3, 4 and 5 are far more natural in keeping with the surroundings. Let's go and have a look now. Option 3 is a little walled garden. Okay, so the wall is probably man-made, but it looks pretty natural, doesn't it? This walled garden farm has got 4 entrances that you can go through, each of them gated off nicely so as nothing can get in. The path runs through and segments the garden into 2, and I've got 1 crop on one side and 1 crop on another. And just like the first farm, I've got a jack-o'-lantern scarecrow sat in the middle of it to add some character and also some light. I've further decorated it with a path going all the way around the outside using some packed mud, some coarse dirt and some gravel, and I've scattered some hay bales in there as well. All the way around, I've made the wall at least 1.5 blocks high, using a mixture of mossy and non-mossy slabs, steps and blocks. Now this wall isn't designed to be mob proof because I've put steps and slabs on the outside of it, but remove those and nothing will be able to get in. And make sure you make it interesting and a little bit craggy by putting upside down steps and slabs around the bottom level to give lots of holes. Texture is key for these stone walls, so make sure you use a good mixture of blocks including stone brick, mossy variants, andesite, cobble and stone. Again, this is completely scalable. You can make this as big or as small as you'd like. And change up the decoration, literally go to town. Flowers, different stone variants, different bushes. Do it however you would like. This is your baby. You could even include a water feature in there for a little bit more movement. I use this type of walled garden design all the time. It's really effective and you can do all kinds of different things with it. I really recommend you give it a go. And the next idea is kind of a variation on this really. It's a multi-level wall garden, with each level having a different crop. I quite like the idea of this being up a hill, so I've got slabs and steps going up to the garden, and then further steps going up to the very top circle.
Oh my god, no
It's
wonder
just
you sound
4
better, bro.
7-wide circles stuck together. So it's just
Your
this
voice
shape
sounds tired.
repeated 4
Dom's like
times
playing
with the edges
bass.
overlapping. The first circle
Dom's like
wall is
playing
1 high, the
football
second
with his
is
dad,
2 high, the third
so
is
we're
3
gonna
high,
go play
and the fourth
duos.
is 4 high, which gives you that gradual progression of a spiral. I've not tried it, but I imagine you can carry on spiraling this up as high as you want to. I've textured the walls up using stone, stone brick, cobblestone and andesite. And I roughed the top up a little by sticking some slabs on, otherwise it would
I
look
know,
really, really
bro.
flat. There's a chest right at the entrance and it's a slab, a block, a slab and a block, and then another slab
Not
which takes you
skibbity,
right
bro.
to the top. Although you'll notice
Alright, what are
in
we
each
playing?
farm there is a slab in the corner. That means that you're never going to drop down
Ranked
onto
or
your
regular?
crop from 1 high, which means you'll never
Ranked?
have to rehoe
Alright.
it. That's true of each individual one. There's one there.
All of my friends are unreal and I'm just
So
fucking
one right
champion.
there as well. Yes, I planted radishes. Don't jump.
I'm only-
I've decorated around
Man,
the
I like your old
outside
mic
with
better. Get this
flowers
out of
and
here.
leaves, and also
You sound
put in
too good,
some
bro.
glow lichen and some
sound too
vines
good, bro.
just to make the green stand out against that grey stone. And obviously, each farm section is hydrated with a waterlogged slab in the middle with a post and a light on. And even if I do say so myself, I
Oh,
think this
no.
one looks absolutely brilliant. So farms 3 and 4, far more natural but still constructed by a person, walls etc. are involved. What if we have something that is entirely made by nature? Well, number 5 is exactly that. It is a mountainside waterfall oasis.
Finally,
where the
bro,
water in
we
the
go back to
waterfall and the
school. We
pond
got
below
Senior
is actually
Johnson
hydrating
and
the
we
crops,
got
with a
PE.
little help from the odd bucket hidden under the ground here and there. The entire waterfall
Wait, do you
is
already
powered
have
by a
Spanish?
single bucket waterlogging a step from the top, which falls down over steps and blocks
Oh.
with enough drops to make sure the water
Oh,
goes
now you're
all the
gonna
way
take
to the
art?
I've
Oh,
just made
no,
sure that
you're
all the
cooked.
steps and slabs are all waterlogged and that the pool at the bottom is flat. Now bear in mind, 1 bucket of water gives a hydrating distance of 4 blocks, which means we've got hydration quite a long way
Blocks?
out from the
Dead?
sides of this pool. And also the steps and slabs on this second.
Going on?
I decorated the actual pool up with some green glass panes and some brown candles on top to look like bulrushes, with lily pads, sea pucals and a little bit of seagrass underneath the water to give it some life and movement. And I threw in a little bit of sugar cane there for texture. Well, we've got 3
Okay,
crops
I'm gonna
gradually
land,
coming down each side,
whatever this
starting
is.
with wheat, moving in potatoes and then into carrots. And I've put in a pathway that goes up both directions, one side and the other side of the pool, which means you can go right to the top and access all of your crops really easily. Add in some carefully placed leaves for bushes, a few trees and a load of flowers, and you've got a beautiful area that also provides you with at least 3 different types of crops. Being able to make something beautiful out of something potentially ugly like this place is what separates a
Like how? I just got diddled by 2 people.
and all it is really is a load of textured blocks. We've got some mossy
I
cobble,
just
we've
got
got some
absolute-
andesite,
yeah, I know
we've got
Diddle
some
Bob.
stone, I haven't got any stone bricks because
Yes,
that's
I
not
do.
a natural block. We've got a few variants.
Isn't Diddle Bob a whale?
Textured it up, getting some steps, getting some slabs.
Okay, yeah, I have no idea.
And I think if you were showing your world to your friends and they saw this,
Oh my god!
it's
I'm getting passive.
interesting to know your thoughts. Also, how much you've done to make these blocks work.
There's no way. I'm not playing reload. I hate reload.
So there you
Because
have
reload's
5
gay.
ways that you can build a manual crop farm. These are
Yeah.
designed to inspire you, not necessarily for you to copy. Make them your
We
own.
should see if we can
Change
get
anything up
Godzilla.
you'd like. Seriously, go to town. I'd love to know what you've done. And I will look forward to seeing you in another video. You take it easy now. Bye.
When you shop in the Jewel Osco app, you can count on prices that are the same online as they are in store. Even when you can't count on teenage
We
appetites
gotta
staying
see.
lit.
Nah, actually, let's just play regular ranked.
Villagers are overpowered. I mean, I could buy infinite diamond tools for like 1 emerald each. I'm rich. But Mojang recently released an experimental snapshot that gives villagers a big nerf. Now you can only get certain enchanted books from villagers depending on what biome they're from. And my Superflat world has exactly
Get
one
out.
biome, plain. And let's just say the enchantments it comes with are pretty
What?
plain. So before the new update, I'm gonna build the greatest enchanting library that Minecraft has ever seen.
Wait,
First
can
I
I
have to
put
check on my
Mr.
villager
Meeseeks and
breeder.
some Jordans?
Hello, are you
Oh, nah.
two in love?
Mr. Meeseeks and
Oh,
some
no.
Jordans.
So
Oh,
actually, I
this
already
is
got my
atrocious.
first villager
Yes.
here. And I have this rail line
Coming.
already set up to transport them. Just a quick switcheroo. No! Alright, this should do. I'll even give him a little skylight. You're coming with me. Get in the... Oh, that. There we go. Welcome to your new home, sir. Alright, we need a lot more of these guys. Got a few more villagers around here with good trades. Just gonna
Meeseeks
corral
with
these
the
bad
Jordans
boys.
is
Don't you
absolutely
dare. Place
nefarious.
the block. Place it. No. You know what? Luck of the sea, looting, you get death.
You know, like
Serves you
Dr.
right. Bane of
Nefario.
arthropods, more like bane of my existence. Come on, let's go. I don't have all day. Now we're
made
talking.
perfect
This is
sense.
starting to be a party. So now we're just gonna
Oh
make
my
a nice
God, this
fancy
is
floor
actually
design
cursed.
for this basement area. Then we just gotta make spots for all these unpaid
Can you
interns to
get
stand.
Godzilla in ranked?
Oh, hey, I knew I heard you. Alright, so we've got 5 out of 40 villagers ready to go into their spots, but moving these guys and getting the rest of the trades is going to be a huge pain. So I think instead I should fill you guys in on the full
Where you
plan
at,
for this
Eric's
library.
birthday
I really
party?
want to lay out the basic shape of the building, so we can
Oh,
just
you
grab
don't
some
know
concrete and
God.
start sketching this thing out. My idea is basically a really big version of my town library growing up. We have the main hall, which will have a big dome roof and a spiral staircase, and we'll have some way to access the basement where we keep the villagers. That was the scariest part of my town library growing up. I still remember the
Oh.
sounds. Then
Where
there
we
are
dropping?
2 wings, one for fiction and one for non-fiction. And in the front we can have a big lower courtyard
Where we
area
dropping?
where you could eat lunch or find a shady place to read. So that's our plan. I decided to put the library at the top level of our city, which is where I want all the government buildings to go. You know, city hall, post office, courthouse, that sort of thing. The only thing in the way is this tree farm I built and used like one time. I could work this into the build and try to hide it, or I could
Can't
do this.
believe
Yes,
Jamie did this
yes,
thing, God.
die. Alright, I should go collect some resources. The palette on this build is going to use a ton of different types of wood, and I'm also planning to make heavy use of mud and sandstone. The only thing I have already is sandstone because I collected a bunch ahead of time. Luckily, I can get oak, jungle,
Honestly,
birch,
I
and
like
spruce
the
from
old
my
mic.
wood
You
farm,
should've
which
never
I
gotten
fixed
a new mic.
again. If it breaks in this episode, I will cross. So I
I like
basically
the
spent like
old mic,
10
though.
hours just running the farm while
Well,
playing
it's
other
more
games, and I got a
classic, bro.
pretty
It's
good
funny.
amount of each type. I still need to get the dark oak, but that can
classic,
wait. The
bro.
next
It's
day was
funny.
mud
Now
day,
you're
so I
just
killed 2 birds with 1 stone and got
Thanks
rid
to
of a
Mike
bunch
Jaden.
of water around the caves while collecting
I'm
dirt.
cooked, I'm
draining the
cooked.
water so I
Dead?
can lower the seafloor and give it a bit more depth. But that's a project
That
for
noise
another
is
day.
absolutely nefarious. Nefario!
Because the converter is attached to my wood farm and it always
No
seems to
way,
break. But we're
what?
doing it anyways, baby. It's all about believing. Alright, so it turns out my collection system had broken at some point, and I just wasted like a solid 2 shulkers of dirt before I noticed. But eventually, after another full real-life day of work, I had tons of mud ready to go. The only thing we're missing at this point is dark oak wood. So time to put on a movie and get to work.
Literally, really, actually, you can literally play heroes or something, bro. Literally.
And we are done. I got a bunch of shulkers of dark oak, meaning we've officially got all our groceries. So I think it's time to get rid of this ugly
I know what we
magenta
should play.
outline. We're using stripped oak around the base of the main hall, and then
Rise
for
of
the
the
wings, I'm
world.
doing this nice trim with these jungle slabs and stairs. All right, yeah, this is a good start. For this second layer, I feel like the looms are perfect, but they're a bit much on their own, so I'm alternating with the jungle planks. And now we can start to transition to our sandstone.
We should play.
Okay, timeout. I keep falling into the basement, so we need to put a floor down before
Okay,
I lose
please
my
control
mind.
your
Also, I
resources.
really don't want my villagers to be struck by lightning. So I placed in a quick floor, leaving room around the edges for the walls, and then I started getting all the windows into place. I used blackstone and black glass to get a nice strong contrast going with the sandstone. Hey, this is starting to look like an actual building. Although the general layout of the build is based on my
I'm
town
better than
library,
Dom.
I definitely wanted
So
to
now I
have a
just
much
got a
more
1v1
monumental feel,
Yeah.
kind of like
I'm
the
the best!
Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. I went there with
I'm
my
the
8th grade
Hokage.
class, and there was
I
this
know.
insane main hall with a crazy
got a
tall
1v1
dome
here.
ceiling. So to match that vibe, I started by making a grand entrance staircase with some terracotta
gotta
trimming
become the
and tons
Hokage.
of tiny little
I know
details.
absolutely
Then I
nothing
designed
about
an
Naruto.
intricate circular pattern
If
to
I'm
make the
being
floor of the
honest, yeah.
main hall feel really
I only know
fancy and
Naruto,
refined. Lastly, I
the,
built a big
the one
window
with
to
the
fill in
pink
the
hair
remaining
and,
gap in the back of the
Sasuke.
structure. Alright guys, at this point, this main hall just needs a room.
Whoever that
So I
is.
began by creating a little
Oh, I know
ledge around the top of
Kakashi.
the windows so the
I know
dome would be
Pain.
slightly recessed. I went
That's
super
really
crazy
it.
with the detailing using lecterns and even candles. Okay, now I'm starting the foundation of the dome and I'm actually using
I know,
these chiseled
Toby, the
bookshelves
guy with the
just
mask.
because they have such a cool texture. Okay, I'm finally ready for the dome, but I want to make sure it has that ripply effect I saw in the dome of the Capitol building on my trip to DC.
And then,
I wasn't really sure how to accomplish that
the,
look, so I just started
the
creating
person
some
mask,
lines out of
whatever his name
sandstone
is.
to create a wireframe for the dome. Then I
The-
made
the
some more
pervert
lines in
mask,
between
you
those
know.
with mud bricks to get a nice contrast going. Dude, this looks so weird from down here. Then it was just a matter of filling in all the missing blocks with oak wood, which took a surprisingly long time, but I think it was worth it. Man, this looks so good so far. I'm really happy with how this is coming out. I'm so tempted to just keep
No one
building,
joins
but
you, we
at
got
this
a
point, we've
1v1.
neglected
Oh,
the
no, there's
villagers for a
people joining.
minute. And to make things even worse, one of them seems to have died somehow.
Look
I
at the
swear I had five.
Jordans.
So I'm just gonna keep resetting these guys and see how many trades I can knock off our list.
Sorry. Michael Jordans. Let me crease these real quick. Why do I want to crease them? None of my emotes crease the shoes. Are these creasing the shoes?
Alright, we should probably
don't
name
look
tag
creased.
these guys before there's way too many of them. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is add a shoulder
Hey,
box
blah, blah,
above
blah,
each
blah,
villager
blah.
slot for
Blah,
easy
blah, blah, blah,
storage.
blah.
So I'm heading over to the end dimension. I know I should just build a shulker farm,
no.
but then I won't be able to waste hours
It's a
doing
2v1.
this. Alright, I think I've had enough montaging. I brought back more than enough shulker shells, and I got tons of other good stuff too. So I started decorating the trading hall, which I think I'm gonna call the archives from now on, just because it sounds a lot cooler than the villager basement. And then I put a lectern and a shulker box at each
You know what's
station, and
there.
I put down a sign for each enchantment. Okay, so this place has
We
40
gotta wait for
slots, but my
players.
list has Swift Sneak on it, which is not obtainable on
I heard
Superflat,
Diddy.
and I also have an empty slot as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock out 2 of these
Going to the
spots
free
on
build
this
thing.
side, and we can make a staircase here going up. Okay, everything is just about set up down here, so I think it's time
Are
we
you-
start
are you
queuing
actually
these guys
playing
and getting
Minecraft?
them into place. We have 11 villagers so far, so I'm gonna bring
There's
55
no way this kid
apples
is
so I can
playing
make sure I
Minecraft.
cure them all 5
What are you even
times.
doing in Minecraft?
Ooh, I see a helmet, boy. Please, sir, have a seat. I insist.
You don't do
And in
survival?
you go.
You don't do survival?
What? Are you kidding me? I just had to wait all day for you to spawn, so you better not misbehave, mister. Okay, this time I'm going to personally Why? Okay, 3rd time's a charm, right? I learned my lesson. This time I'm gonna
I play
actually split them
survival,
up,
but
so
it
maybe
gets
they won't
boring
spawn
when
at
you
all.
have no one to play with.
No, why did I just do that? Oh, please stop, please.
Okay,
Just...
Minecraft with your sister, that's kind of
Okay, I got
tough.
most of them back in, so
And
I'm
then
just gonna
she
go ahead
dies
and cure
while
these
trying-
guys,
okay, come on,
and
come on,
I'll
come on.
cure the remaining ones after. While I
One more
waited for the
Minecraft, one more
zombies to
Minecraft.
cure, I got a bit of work done
Are you
on
playing it
the
in another
interior.
tab?
I also started putting a book on each
OG
lecture listing
custom
all the
loadout.
different trades that each villager
Reload
offers. It
custom
took me about
loadout.
40 minutes to get
OG
all of
Community
those
loadout.
slots, and
Community
afterwards I
loadout.
decided to do some more research. I got
Community
channeling,
loadout.
curse of binding,
Community
lure,
loadout.
and silk touch. I learned my lesson from the iron golems and started curing them before getting any more. Once those 4 were in place, I did one last round of resetting, getting Unbreaking,
What did I just
Projectile
choose?
Protection, Curse of Vanishing, Frostwalker, and Impale. And while
Goal
curing those 5
003.
guys, I finished off the dome
Denied.
with a cool stained glass skylight. I just wanted to see how this looks with this shader called Rethinking Voxels. Yo, this is so cool. Look at the colors. After
Wait,
that,
what
I
did
got
we
each
do?
villager into place, bringing our enchantment count right to the halfway point. And also, this staircase knocked off another
What?
2 slots. So with the villagers halfway there, I'm finally allowing myself to build once again. I'm so excited to do the
That's
wings of the
fine. I mean,
library
it's
so we can
not
really
as
see how
bad.
big this thing is. All right, let's do this. The style looks fancy, but it's actually easier than you think. I basically just put windows with sandstone
Under me,
pillars on
above.
each side, everywhere I possibly could. All right, here it is.
Oh my god, I'm running.
All right, here it
21
is, the
kills.
finished win. It looks really good on the outside,
He's
but
getting sprayed by
yeah,
his
in here,
teammate.
this
I don't know
gaping
where
pit
it is.
makes this kind of a nightmare liminal space. So rather than coming up with another floor pattern, I'm just gonna copy the one from the archives below. It's recycling. It's good for the planet, you know?
What?
Doing the floor was honestly like the
This
most
is so
zen
gay,
thing I've
bro.
done in this video so far. I was totally zoning
Climb,
out, just
click,
watching
6,
YouTube
9,
videos
6,
about
9.
Zelda lore, and before I knew it, the entire hole was sealed off. This feels so much better already, and there's so much space to do such an awesome library interior. Okay, time to do everything I just did again on this
You're
side.
down
I'm
there.
starting with the floor this time, just because that makes way more sense. Since I'd already done it once, I was going way faster this time until I got distracted. Aw, a cat spawned. Wait, come back. Come here, kitty. That's right. Come here, have some fish. There you go. I'm gonna name you Tone. Every good library needs a cat wandering around, so this is perfect. After that adorable encounter, I wrapped up the rest of the wing pretty quickly. The only real obstacles were some mobs in the roof and a few phantom attacks, but I persevered and I was able to completely finish off the exterior of the library.
73% of organizations experienced a successful ransomware attack in the past year alone. AI will only increase the volume and sophistication of these attacks. Ransomware protection. Barracuda Cybersecurity Solutions safeguard your organization by protecting against phishing
Bro is not
attacks,
even in his prime.
securing applications and access, and ensuring the protection and recovery of your valuable data.
Practice. Dead.
Organization hostage. Get fierce defenses in 3 steps. To learn more, visit barracuda.com/ransomware.
Oh my god, so bad! Yeah, buddy.
As much as I'm in love with how this looks, one thing is really bugging me. The smooth stone path going around my castle is looking pretty outdated these days. Most of my city uses dirt paths or a mix of stone
You
blocks.
got that kid, I got this kid.
So even though this is gonna take forever, I'm gonna completely rip all this out and redo it. And while I'm at it, we can get rid of this old half-broken redstone pipe system that comes on it. So I got to work ripping up all the old paths
Who
and
thinks he can
redstone around
stand
the
there and
base,
spray?
and then I laid down a brand new road, which I think looks so much better. When I got to the quadrant containing our library,
I am the one who
I
knocks!
connect the new road to the main entrance, and I even created small connections to the courtyards we're gonna
I
be
am
making.
the
I'm
one who
so much happier with how this all looks now. But we still have so much more to get done. We've got the courtyards to build and tons more trades to lock in. But worst of all, we've got space. A lot of space. All this
Bro,
space needs to be
this
filled
is
up with
great,
beautiful
great.
interiors, starting with some staircases. My childhood came full circle when I built this spiral staircase up to the balcony on the 2nd level. Afterwards, I created a staircase to access the archives, which finally connected up the build for the first time. Then I used stairs, walls, and lanterns to give the dome ceiling a more beige look. I even made this intricate chandelier with candle crystals to reinforce the fanciness. The end rods make it look super elegant. So from down here, it's looking pretty good. But we need some real library staples, you know? Places to study, a mean librarian. We definitely need some useful stuff too, like an enchantment table. And of course, lots of books, right, Tome? Isn't it right? I'm gonna put the reception area here since we have the space right near the entrance. And we'll put down some little knickknacks to dress it up a little bit. Perfect. Now we're just gonna sprinkle some little study areas around. And we'll put a nice big study table in this spot here.
This is
Finally, it was time to start
much
adding
you wanna
bookshelves,
bet
and
this
it instantly
display
felt 100
on
times
in
more like a
Windows?
library. But I'm leaving the chiseled bookshelves empty for now.
I
You'll
know.
see why soon. I moved on to the 2nd level of the main hall, adding more bookshelves and study areas, and I even added a bit of greenery on the shelves. Over the past few updates, things like candles and decorated pots have made it so much easier to get that
full
cozy.
bot!
So it's a bit dark up here at night, but I did a quick lighting check and it looks like everything is fully mob cleared. Honestly, I kind of like it. It feels fitting. I gave Tom a name tag real quick and began preparing for the next task. capturing a librarian. So I set up this little railway here. I'm gonna grab some milk just in case things get spicy. Okay, no librarians over here. Oh, I think I see one. Oh, she's mean, all right. Ow! This is way too far away. No. Okay, new plan. Mob sorter on. Yeah, I'm not sure why I didn't just do this in the first place. Okay, here we go. We got one. And she's down.
You look like LeBron.
Yes, we got her. You are just like the librarian.
I actually was doing that good.
Okay, down you go. You don't go anywhere. I've got the perfect name tag. Okay, now this is the hard part. Time to do some very basic redstone. Next is painting here.
Come on, am I him?
Get down there, please, ma'am. Oh my god, she hit home! Heal. Come here,
Come on,
kitty.
if I
Let's
clutch
do
this, I'm not
something.
doing it.
Don't scare
I'm
me
in.
like that. Alright guys, I think I got this working. We come over here and hit this button and bam, our mean librarian comes and yells at us. Then we can hit it again, she goes back. Oh, come on, is that not the coolest thing ever?
It's massive.
Oh my god, the bat. But we've still got one empty spot in our main hall.
Cracked.
I think this is the perfect place for our enchanting set. I use this amazing design by Rexstone that has a really unique way of selecting your enchantment level. I put the tutorial in the description. Okay, so check that out. It looks pretty standard, right? But underneath here, we have a lectern. And I hit a little book behind that you can pop in there. And each page controls one bookshelf. So you can go all the way down, or you can just take it out for the full 30 level enchant. But I just had to play a little spin on it. So I installed these lapis launchers on each side. And after you're done, you can just throw the extra in this little hidden hopper here. And with that, I think this main hall is finished, which leaves the wings.
Bro, he just
the
runs
courtyard,
around and
of
shoots,
course,
bro.
our villager basement. And speaking of the villagers, I took a break from building to do a little bit more resetting. I got 6 more enchantments, and while curing the villagers, I started one of the hardest tasks yet. Remember when I said we were leaving the chiseled bookshelves empty for a bit? Well, this is why. I want every single book in this library to have an actual name. This might be the craziest part of the whole project so far. So I got to work naming tons of books while my villagers cured. And after another round of curing, just 8 enchantments were left. So I'm trying to fill in these books, but my anvils keep breaking. So it's a perfect time to build a little place for my anvils. I think right here
Oh my God.
stairs is the perfect
No
spot
way.
to put it. I followed another amazing tutorial by
Jaden,
Rexstone to quickly get the
Jaden,
redstone for the
bro.
contraption into place. Then I finally
There's
added some walls to
actually
the
no way
mezzanine,
you
including some entrances that
The
we can
clip
somehow
was
link
set
up
up
to the
to
courtyard.
8-year
Anvils
wall.
stack up perfectly to the back of the build, so we can easily hide the refill spot. Okay, so there are anvil breaks. We press this. That is so
Let me get this other kid from my
With the
montage.
Anvil Station
Let me
done,
get this other
I
kid
spent
from
a
my
whole
montage.
live stream taking suggestions from chat for books. And now I'm feeling so inspired
If I
to make
die,
this
it's
an
not going to
actual
the montage.
functioning library with books that really teach you something. Like this book that teaches you how to make all the stews. Or even stuff like this book of haikus that we're working on in the poetry section. Imagine if instead of checking the Minecraft wiki anytime I need to remember how to craft or brew something, I could just go to my library. We can even have super flat specific stuff, like this book I wrote about the extinct mob.
No way, I
if you
just
wanna
got
help
side
out,
jumped
I made a
like a
forum channel for the project. Just go to discord.gg/mogswamp. I actually just picked out this billboard design by GameDoor64 for the harbor, so I definitely want to do more community stuff like this. I've got so many books ready to go now, but most of these sections aren't even built yet. So while I build this up, I'll give you some of my favorite titles so far. I began with the fiction wing on the right-hand side of the building. I knew I wanted to put a children's section on this side, kind of like my town library had. My best advice to anyone struggling with large interiors like this is to find ways to divide up the space. I made sure to utilize all of the vertical space available so that we could actually grab all the books at the tippy top. That's high up. To finish things off, I came in with some nice detail work. I made a smaller chandelier in the same style as the grand one in the main hall, and then I hung some paintings on the walls way up near
The one
the
you
ceiling.
just killed?
But somehow, it's
Or
still
Steam
missing
Mixer.
something. This part
I
of the
see it.
library is just screaming for a super secret hidden entrance. So I grabbed my redstone and got
Oh my
to
God,
work.
I hit
It was
that.
really hard to fit everything in such a tight space, but I think
Wait,
I
they should
just
left.
about
I think
pulled
they
it
both
off.
left.
Alright, so the secret room is actually
he's trying
right
to tough
above
it
here.
out.
You go up the stairs,
Let me
then
get a
up
clip,
the
let me get a
ladder,
clip.
and if you put books
Oh,
in,
Margot! Oh!
bam, entrance revealed. It's pretty tight in here, and I'm honestly not really sure what we can do with it yet. I do have one idea, but it'll have to wait till the end of the video. With the wing finished, I could finally start sectioning off each genre and filling in books.
Wait, let
I
me-
filled in fiction novels on the
gonna
back
stop my
wall,
recording. I
including
got
such
the clip.
classics
all
as
set
Of
up.
Caves and Cliffs and The Great
We're gonna
Flats.
re-record.
20,000 Leagues Under Salacia went into the science fiction section in the back.
Hey, slaves, get back in the box.
Romance, mystery, and horror novels upstairs, including the steamy 50 Shades of Dirt, the puzzling case of the extra suspicious stew, and the terrifying read of House of Cards. Lastly, I put fantasy novels at the very top, including the best-selling hits A Wrinkle in TPS, Alice in Wonderland, and James and the Giant Gapple. With all the fiction books in place, now the non-fiction books needed a home too. I want the two wings to be slightly different, so I'm trying to mix up the furniture as much as I can while still following the same general layout. I got most of the way through building the final wing, but while flying back and forth for materials, I just couldn't help but notice how boring the landscaping around the library looked. So I took a break to start adding some natural beauty to the plot, starting with the awkward space behind the main hall. I added in some custom trees and rocks, which was also a good opportunity to have a beautiful stage. Then I moved to the front of the building and put an actual railing along those gaping holes in the courtyard. Lastly, I took a bunch of beacons with some nether stars I had sitting around and used them to create some beautiful sunken lights to mob-proof everything. That was actually a good break. I came up with some cool ideas for this wing while I was landscaping. And so I began to implement all my new ideas, starting with an area for astronomy. I also added a catwalk to the top section, and I really just tried to make the layout feel like this is where the research gets done. Okay, I think this thing is ready to be split
We
up
have like
into
100
sections.
million
Once I had
quadrillion
everything
HP,
sectioned
so
out,
we're just
I
gonna
finally sorted the last of my pre-made books into all the different sections. It's still pretty empty in here, but I can't wait to see these shelves come to life with the help of the community.
We have like a
Other than the
quadrillion HP.
basement, this library interior is officially
So we're kinda-
finished. So it's finally time to tackle the very last thing I need to build. The courtyards. I came up with this new palette using oxidized copper and headstone, and I think it actually looks so cool with this build. I figured out where the stairs would connect to the villager basement, and then copied that to the other side. I'm really trying to make each side different, just like I did for the interior of each one. But I did decide to use the same fountain
I'm
on each
copying
side
all
to
your
serve as
side
a sort of
jumps, and
focal
I
point.
just
After a bit of work, I was
one
finished with the
him all
base
day,
layer
so.
of each side, and it was time to go back in with some details.
I'm
I
actually
put some
back.
picnic tables on one side and a big garden area on the other. Then I made one final sweep across the entire front
one's
of the
for
building
LeBron.
to add in a bunch of custom trees. I also added this little
Make this
birdhouse
shot,
tower
LeBron's gonna
thing
die to an
add one
incurable
more little
disease.
point of difference. Man, I
Oh,
wish I
thank
could
God.
get parrots for this. Yo, this looks so amazing.
Well, we can edit each
right
other's
now.
builds,
The trees
so
really did finish this
actually
off. Oh, I'm so happy to be done building. But before I can end the video, we have 8 final trades that have been
I was wondering,
haunting my dreams.
I don't build out of
In
bricks.
fact, I'm adding a horror book to my library called 8 Final
We
Trades.
should both
So I
use
set up a
bricks to
stopwatch
compete each
just
other.
to see how bad the last 8 would end up being.
I did not hit your wall. Run it! I just. Oh yeah, that you left. It's not very Sigma of you.
All in all, it honestly didn't take
just
as long as I
lost
thought.
one
Hour 5
aura
was the
point.
last one, and it took the longest by far at 16 minutes and 19
birthday's in
seconds. I
4
was
days.
super
4
relieved
days,
to finally be done.
alright.
Wait a minute, that's not 40. Yeah, so one of the slots is for soul speed, which isn't tradable. Maybe I'll make a portal and some storage and hook it up to my piglin bartering farm, because currently I just throw those books out. Or maybe another enchantment's gonna be added, I don't know. While curing the villagers for the last time, I decided to fix the hole behind the staircase and the exposed redstone on the ceiling, both of which were really bothering me. Last one, I quickly sorted the last of the villagers and got all of their
Ready
books
up for King
formatted.
Boy.
I also went ahead and got a shulker box full of every enchantment, since that was on the list too. I mean, I'm not gonna show you each one, but if you really don't believe me, the world
What if
download
King
will
Boy
be up
Angel
on Patreon soon.
wasn't
I
king?
shoved the zombie under the stairs for safekeeping, and then I cleaned up our villager pit that started everything. Man, I think I'm tearing
if
up a
King
bit.
Boy Angel
Okay, now we can
wasn't
drop
a
right
boy?
down in the basement from the top. Oh, that's so nice. The
What
only
if
other thing
King Boy
bothering me was this
Angel
weirdly empty wall,
wasn't
so I
an
added
angel?
one last touch that every library needs. A book return.
What if
Check it out, now I
Skibbity
can be super lazy
had no
and just
toilet?
throw my books in here. I mean, I still have to sort them later, but
What if
I don't know. Maybe
Optimus
I'll add a book sorter
wasn't in
someday
his
or something.
prime?
Man, I think this is my favorite build I've ever made.
What if
Oh
Mike
yeah, one more thing.
had no
Remember this
Tyson?
secret space? I'm gonna turn it into the restricted section and fill
What
it
if
with
Jake
banned books. If
didn't
you want
know
to see me
Paul?
work on it, I'm live on YouTube every Wednesday.
Okay, that
Alright,
one
see
made
ya.
no sense. What if Snoop had no dog? What if Ice had no spice? What if M had no M? What if Dre wasn't a doctor? What if Mr. Meeseeks wasn't a mister? Meeseeks. Okay, come on, roll weapons. I'm using a pump and a star. And a grappler. I know that's a striker. We don't use those. Get it!
Today's the day.
What if Mr. Meeseeks wasn't a Meeseek? Wait, what if Mr. Meeseeks didn't seek me? What if
Today,
oh, no, I
I'm gonna
can't
spend
do that.
100 full Minecraft days building a city. You see, it's already been almost
What
3
if 50
years
had
since
no
I made a
sense?
master plan for my super flat survival world. At the time, many of my projects sat unfinished and sort of disconnected from one another.
What
But
if
I had
Fort
a vision for a
wasn't at
grand
night?
city surrounded by a massive mountain range, unifying everything in the world. And although I'm definitely proud of all the progress we've
Alright.
made, let's be honest, there's still not much of a city.
What if
so
Apex
today I'm tackling
had
this
no
entire
legends?
northeast quadrant of the map. We are gonna build as much as possible, starting now.
What if
I
Call
kicked off day one by
had no
beginning
dude?
construction on a curved road that's going to connect the top tier of the city to the lower platform. I've designed everything ahead of time in a creative copy of my world, and I'm using a mod
What if
called
two
Mathematica to help me
didn't
see
have
where
any
everything
K?
needs to go. Notice how I'm leaving plenty of space for the houses to go, because I want this road to contain fancy housing for all the people of the city
if
who work at the
Africa
nearby
had
lumber
no
mill.
Kevin
This
Hart?
brings me to the first great challenge of this project, building diagonally.
I don't
You see
even
this? This is a building, and over here is another building.
Hurry up, bro.
Nice
Come on, bro.
and
Hurry up,
straight,
bro.
just like in Minecraft. Easy enough, right? But take a look from above.
How are you playing
and
Fortnite? Yeah, you're
everything
playing Fortnite.
changes. Even cities with grids have all sorts of slants. It's what gives a city
whoa,
life.
whoa,
But building
whoa, whoa,
diagonally in
whoa.
Minecraft has always been a struggle for me. Like, how do you make a door? So as I built the road up over the next few days, I prepared to face my fears head on and build as many diagonal structures as possible. Alright, so I think I broke my lumber mill again, which is also my mud and cobble farm. But at least this time nothing seems to have blown up. I think just the piston conveyors got
did
messed
not
up,
playing
so
on
I'm just gonna have
controller?
to fix this later. Luckily, I had enough mud to finish the walls for our road, and after chopping a bit of acacia
Imagine
wood,
now
the
running
job was finished.
120
I quickly laid
FPS.
out the path for the lower road, which doubles back to reach an even lower tier of the city containing the lonely lumber mill. Don't
Imagine
worry,
now
buddy.
being
Soon
Mr.
you'll have
Meeseeks
lots
in
of other
Jordans.
building friends. On day 7, I set out to give our lumber mill some buddies by
But the
starting on the
fit is
first
so
house.
friggin'
This one isn't
tough.
actually diagonal, so consider it a bit of a warm-up. The further down this road we build, the more slanted the houses are gonna get. I built the house very directly based on the historic 1889 C.A. Belden House in San Francisco.
Fufu
a
and
prime
a
example of
juicy
one of my
soup.
favorite architectural styles, Queen Anne Victorians. We'll talk about them a bit more later in the video. By the end of day 8, I made some great progress, and the house basically just needed a roof, which I worked on the next day. I began another one on day 10, and after
Bruh,
a long,
what are we
hard
doing, Jaden?
Minecraft day of work, the house was just about finished. On day 11, I wrapped things up by adding a little tower on
building a
top, and
super
then I
big
powered through the
Minecraft
next
house.
house. And by this point, things were starting to get pretty slanted. I actually didn't even use
Isn't
reference
just me?
photos for these
Everyone
last
built
two
like a
houses, so I
super
could
big
focus more on the
Minecraft house out of
diagonal
like diamond,
construction. My
emeralds, and
strategy was
gold.
to take the normal rectangle of a Minecraft building and start dividing it up into odd sections.
I
sliding
did
things
that on
over
my
one
brother's
block at a
PS4
time.
and I
This
never got
split
to
and
finish
slide
it.
method is something I've used before in my city, like on these shops over at the harbor. It also kind of sounds like the name of a new line dance. I went to craft some more looms on day 12, and I was able to finish up the third house, and then I began constructing a
Alright,
fourth house using that
pump
same
and star.
split and slide technique to create the diagonal. For this one, I took inspiration for the color palette from this house on Carl Street, which is also in San Francisco. Nothing could stop the building trade.
Did bro use
And I
the
finished the
boy
building by
Oni
the end
mask?
of day
Get out.
13 and began house number 5 the next day. This was the first truly diagonal house, so rather than using the split and slide method, I instead had to establish a diagonal line that felt natural, which was a significant challenge. For houses like this, I would fly way up
That's
in
an
the sky,
extra
look
get
at the
out.
center of my base, and try to imagine that the house was like a little slice of the
Alright,
pizza.
it's
That
too
probably made no sense, but pizza is
in the
cool.
moment.
After establishing the general shape, I based the form of the building on yet another house from San Francisco, this time from the iconic Alamo Square. This one was built in 1894. Only 90s kids will remember, am I right? The next day I cleaned out my inventory, and I cleaned up a few missing details, and then I started on house number 6 at nightfall. For this one, I paid homage to the historic 1891 Corbin Norton House on Martha's
six kids
Vineyard,
was
an
never
island
cooked.
belonging to my
What?
home state of Massachusetts.
Get out of here. Get out of
Unfortunately,
here.
the gorgeous color palette called for a
Get
bunch
outta
of
here.
mangrove wood, which is my least favorite wood type
Put
to collect.
the
But collect
phone
I did,
down.
and by
This
the end
is
of day
for
16,
my
I was finished with that
safety.
house and on to the
First
next.
to what?
This This was the last house with any sort of back to it, by the
I'm
way.
actually
I
getting
made a
cooked.
little porch area, which again is straight from the reference. Lecterns are
Your necks are
fantastic
good,
for
bro.
railings like this. At
my
this
necks
point,
are
I guess I
bad.
fancied myself as a bit of an architect because I decided to go off reference for this little pink house in Bay 17. I found that using fences and walls around the windows not only helps mitigate the difficult diagonal building, but it also creates the heavily ornamental look that you see with
It
these
was lined up
queen
right
I
with
ran
my
out
big
of
blue
gilded
head.
netherrack, and I also needed more quartz, so now would be a good time to dive a little deeper into the
Oh, no.
architecture. So as I mentioned,
Oh,
this
no.
style of house is called a Queen Anne Victorian, which is a
I'm
bit of a confusing.
standing, son.
See,
Okay,
architects
no,
have
no.
this annoying habit of naming some of their
not
styles
standing.
after whoever ruled Britain
I'm
at
not
the
standing,
time.
Dad,
That's
no
why
stand.
you may have heard of the Georgian style, named after George, or
Alright, go
Edwardian
easy on
after
me.
King
Go
Edward,
easy.
or Jacobean after James? Huh. Apparently James in Latin is Jacobus? Just when I thought this couldn't get any more confusing. Anyhow, so right away the name Queen Anne Victorian is confusing. Like, which
Remember,
queen
guys,
is
this
it?
is just a
Anne or
friendly
Victoria?
1v1
Well, really,
between
Victoria
friends.
is more accurate. The Victorian era lasted from 1837 to 1901, and most Queen Anne Victorians were built between 1880 and 1901, which, by the way, is precisely the time period I like to build from in my world. In the UK, there's an entirely different architectural style called Queen Anne.
Remember,
that
guys,
looks nothing
friendly
at all like the US
1v1
version.
between
So what
friends.
happened here? Long story short, some silly Americans built some ornate Victorian houses.
pulled out
They
my
didn't know much about
inventory, bro.
architecture, so they called them Queen Anne, even though they shared almost nothing in common with their namesake. They tend to be very ornate, often with big front porches, squeaky pitched roofs,
What?
and an emphasis
Okay,
on
I won't
asymmetry.
mention
In the 1960s, there was a movement to paint these old Victorians with 2 to 3 bright colors in order to accentuate their intricate architectural details. These became
I'll
known
never
as
be the
painted
Hokage.
ladies, but they have nothing to do
Until I
with
get
these
a PC.
butterflies, which are also called painted ladies. There's a famous row of them in
PC
San
really
Francisco
that much
lining
better,
Alamo
bro?
Square called Postcard Row. Oh, and
PC
apparently
really
one of
that
these
much
is the
better, bro?
house from Full House. I don't know, man. My head hurts, and I think
I
we've
feel
done
like
enough
I
learning
would
for
cook
today.
some little Timmys on a PC, but
Luckily, I got what I needed
Just
from the
me.
nether, and I was able to start some new buildings by the end of day
You can
18.
get off,
These
I'm
two
tired.
buildings are
I'm
built at a
tired.
true 45-degree diagonal line, making them a
Yes,
bit
fine.
easier than some of the other ones.
Lay
the pair is
down.
based very closely on the historic 1890 Albert Wilford houses,
got a
once
what?
again in San Francisco. This time we're in the Pacific Heights neighborhood. According to the
Oh.
National Register of Historic Places in San Francisco, these houses
Alright.
are quite unique for their use of an
I'm
equilateral
gonna turn that
arched
monitor to
domical
up
bay
to do-
roof.
like, they
I
tilt
think
the
that's these
monitor up.
things. I opted to skip out on building the equilateral
Oh, this
arched
is so
domical bay
weird.
roofs, but I think the buildings came out pretty good regardless. I finished up on day 19, and on our 20th day, I began house
Yeah, I
number
took my
10.
monitor down.
That's 2 days per building. Not bad at all. For the reference on this next house, we
Ah.
go back again to Massachusetts, this time in Hyde Park, which is a neighborhood of Boston.
I used
The
to-
unique
I remember
coloring
I used
inspired
to
me
play
do
with
this
my
blue
monitor,
terracotta trim with the light
like,
blue
you remember on my
concrete gutter,
account
but
where I
then for
had
the roof, I
Mobile
decided to go
Master?
off reference in order to get just a bit
Yeah,
more
on that
contrast
account, I
with the
used to
other
play with
houses
my
when you
monitor
look at
all
it
the
from
way
above.
down,
Too
tilt
much
it all the way
blackstone
up.
can be really overbearing, and
I still have it all the
can't
way
get
down.
deep slate in
I've
my
never
Superfly
played with
world
my
to break it
monitor all
up.
the way
I finished
up.
the building up
It's
on day
stupid.
21, and I began gathering materials for the last 2 buildings on the road. This pair's inspiration are 2 iconic painted ladies at Alamo Square. According to Zillow, this pink one was built for the Harder family in 1899. The renovated home sold for $7.3 million in 2021. The green one appears to have been sold in 2022 for a much more affordable $4.6
Oh, this is
million.
so
Suddenly,
weird.
Wandy's
I'm not
prices
doing
seem
this, I can't.
reasonable. But luckily, I can build these Minecraft versions for free.
Alright.
Well, I guess that's not quite true, because I ran out of
Okay.
glass and I had to go do a bit of trading.
Well,
But once
look.
I had secured enough glass to finish the project, I was able to spend all of day 23 working on the buildings. The detailing on
Okay,
these was
200,
really a
200.
delight, even though the diagonal was a bit wonky. The birch and the
200,
sandstone
bump
worked
check for it.
beautifully together against these slightly
I
desaturated
got the
terracotta colors.
J's on?
It just
Oh
really
my
sells
God,
that
they're
Queen
looking
Anne
crispy.
style. I wrapped up the
And they
buildings on day
just-
24, and before I knew it, I was
What
a
was that?
quarter of the way through the 100 days.
These are not
Wandy
little
T
Timmys,
stopped by
bro.
to
I
congratulate
might
me
get
on my
pissed. I
progress,
don't know
but
about
he had
you.
nothing to say. Before we go any further into the
I'm getting
video,
cooked.
I just have to ask. Are you if so, then please click the link
See,
below.
I should have gotten
Anytime
off.
I can tell you guys, I have an amazing
I would have gotten
sale
off this
right
would not have
now on
happened.
Makeshift, and it may or may not be based on my high school science teachers. That legal? There's only 2 weeks left to place your order. I'll probably never do this
What?
again. This is basically the cutest way to pledge your allegiance to Superflat for, or sell it in 10 years for 5 million Dogecoins and buy a new Android girlfriend. This thing is so high quality, it's so cute. I went back and forth so many times with the designers to make sure it was perfect. Look, he's holding my logo, and he even has my Minecon cape. We need 200 orders to make sure these get made, so go to the description, click the link, and order one right now. All right, Alright, back to the video. I was needing a break from constructing houses, so I decided to switch things up by heading down to the water to work on some docks. I stopped to collect some mangrove wood on day 26, and then I spent the evening working on the docks and battling mobs. Smaller cargo ships can go into the city harbor, but the narrow passage and shallow water significantly limits the size of the vessels. The Wanderer is about as big as you can fit, so bigger ships will be able to use these docks to drop off some of the larger goods like raw lumber. I will say, this more industrial, cluttered style of building is very new to me, but people are always asking me how to get better at building, and I think the answer is really the same as with anything else. Go outside and practice. If you only practice what you're already good at, then it's not really practicing now, is it? As the sun went down on day 28, it just really struck me how much progress we've made as I move towards our city. This could be the most significant transformation my world has ever seen in a single episode. We're working on the box straight through day 29.
Oh my god, bro.
And with my lumber mill temporarily out
You're
of
out here
commission
playing
until I
against
had time to
Time
sit down and
Mongarilla.
repair it, I was gonna have to collect all my spruce wood manually. All the trapdoors for the docks ate right through all the wood I had left,
Whatever
and
that
I had
kid's
no
doing
choice
is
but to take a break and chop down some tall spruce trees on day 30. After a bit more work on the docks, I spent the next day refueling. I crafted more rockets, I grabbed some golden carrots, and I moved some of my shulker boxes to a more convenient location. After that, I started a custom oak tree that's going to act as a buffer between
Indian
the first house
geography.
in this row and the hairpin turn in the road. The next morning, I was finally ready to get started
Oh,
on another
okay.
house. The inspiration for this one takes us to Ocean Grove, New Jersey. This storybook-like
plotting,
7-bedroom fantasy masterpiece includes a lush
I
garden
just
outside,
blinked.
which is
I keep
what inspired
blinking.
me to create the custom oak tree. I was also inspired by the patterns in the shingles to do these little slab patterns on the
I'm
Blackstone
gonna try to-
roof. The reference also inspired me to do this little quartz-lined window
Did Bridget
protruding
turn
from the
into a
tower
monkey
roof.
from the
I
zoo?
really enjoyed this one, and it felt like I was really hitting my stride
Right.
because at this point I barely noticed I was building slanted at all. On day 34, I wrapped up my 13th house and began construction on a new one. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any information on the reference for this next house, but it sure looks nice. I strayed away from the reference a little bit by adding this rooftop.
Oh my god, dead.
What are we doing a tough roof? Roofs are probably the most difficult part of building a slant, but they can also be kind of forgiving.
Some
Like, a
art
lot of the more
geography.
awkward spots kind of just get filtered out by your imagination, especially at a distance. I broke ground on the 15th house as the sun rose on day 36.
Back on the day one.
The amazing color palette for this one comes straight
He just
from
shot
this
me through my
historic
stairs. I'm actually gonna go into my
1992
weekend.
mansion known as the Madrona Castle. It was built during this population boom that followed the Great Seattle Fire of 1889. These light brown shingles you see in some of the photos of the house inspired me to use spruce wood for the roof, and I think that was the perfect choice. On day 36, the house was finished, and I was feeling amazing about how the road was looking. These big path block squares are actually the slime chunks in my city. The path blocks disable them from spawning, and then when I go to build in the area, I can kind of blend the ground enough that they don't stand out too much. There's a few examples of this throughout the city already. He stopped by again on day 38, and I bought some tropical fish from him, and then got back to work on the house. The next day I was ready to go back to building, so I began working on the biggest houses yet. I'm imagining that most of the people in the houses we've been building are either office workers for the lumber mill or the docks, or they work on the upper level of the city, where I'll be putting government buildings like a post office, a town hall, and a library. The houses closest to the mill probably belong to its wealthy owners, which is why we're going a bit bigger and more extravagant. The one I'm building now is inspired by the
They're all up here.
Your family does? Someone made it back in the day. But where did it come from?
Oh my god.
And how did it get all the way to you?
It's like a superpower where every
See for
shot you
yourself
punch.
at Ancestry.
Albert H. Beach House, built in 1896, not even 10 years after the town of Escondido in Simpson was incorporated. So basically, my Minecraft world is older than the town was when they built the house. This house in particular really made me wish we had a green wood type. Please, Mojang, it would be so awesome, please. Instead, I was forced to use the warped wood, which strays quite a bit from the reference, but I think it works okay nonetheless. After a couple trips to the nether for warped wood and blackstone, the building was finished by day 43. I'm using white terracotta for this next one, but unfortunately, I don't have any stock at mason. My mason villagers. I'm only able to buy 48 blocks per day, so it might take a little while
Be
to
darn
finish.
simple
Even though
to
I'm using
use.
white terracotta, my main inspiration is called the Pink Lady, otherwise known
Right,
as the
bro?
J. Milton Carson House.
I'm actually
This
about to
lovely
like
house was
voice
built
my
in
keyboard.
1889 in Eureka, California, just across
I
the
don't
street
play
from the
my
Carson
keyboard, but I'm
Mansion,
running
which is
break
perhaps the
time.
most famous Queen Anne Victorian, other than maybe the Winchester Mystery House. William Carson, the rich guy who lived in the Carson Mansion, had the Pink Lady constructed for his
No,
son
I didn't.
as
I
a
keep
wedding
blinking
present.
him.
I don't think I even brought a present to the last wedding I went to. Now I feel terrible. Maybe when Wood Knot 20 rolls around, I'll add some cherry wood to the house and make it a little bit more pink. But with the pink blocks in the game at the moment, I just couldn't really find a good option. These bigger houses are really fun to do. Especially after doing all the skinny row houses. I feel like I have space to spread out and really explore this Victorian style. Between gathering the granite, the quartz, and the terracotta, progress on this house was relatively slow and the days were just flying by. So on day 48, I began construction on the final Queen Anne house. We can work on this while I wait for the materials
Only
I need
5
to
sticks,
finish
you
up
can still
the
make it
plating
come back.
I'll be doing plenty more buildings, but most of them from here on out will be shops and offices. For this last one, I wanted to try more of a classic brick construction rather than the vibrant painted pages. Coincidentally, 2 different buildings from the same town came up in my online research. Details on these houses were pretty scarce online. I'm not sure if they might have had the same architect or if there's any relation between them at all. But I found it quite fun to work with the enormous diagonal porch, and I'm pretty happy
like,
with
what am
how
I playing?
the building came out.
Like, what am I playing,
Afterwards, I
bro?
finished up that little gazebo, and I made several passes on all the houses, adding any remaining missing blocks I could find. I continued tidying up for the next few days, and I tried lighting up a bit as well. I also want to add vegetation where possible, so I worked on a
Bro, it's
big
trying its
custom
hardest not to
spruce
yell.
tree. Also, mobs were starting to get pretty frustrating, so I decided to promise myself to get better at lighting things up. Once again, I relocated my shelter boxes on day 54, and the next day I was done cleaning things up and ready to continue building. I gave myself a break from all
What
the
is up with this
diagonals
shotgun and
to this
shooting
quirky
for
little drugstore. This is the kind of place that will have a big counter inside with a soda fountain and sell things like candy, cigars, and lipstick. I can't wait to do the interior for this in the future. I have so many ideas. These little banners take forever to do, but they really complete the old time. With the banners done, I was ready to move on to another building. I knew I wanted one on this corner, but I wasn't sure what to build at first. But I figured since the cemetery is just down the stairs, it would make sense to build some sort of morgue or mortuary.
And the other one just sprints into my box
So
like
it stood
Superman.
out as sort of a scholarly structure. The interior for this one is also going to be super fun. The next day, I added a few more custom trees around the area, and then I started working on an office building for the lumber mill on day 59. It took me all of day 60 and the morning of day 61 to finish. And despite my best efforts, I still had a lot of light. On day 62, I planted a tree behind the new office, and then I began a new building in the center of the lumber yard. I'm imagining this one to be sort of like a combination warehouse.
I've
I'm adding
blanked
a bit
him
more
more
texture
times than
variation to
this
our
Call of
buildings
Duty,
since
bro.
they're gonna have a little bit more
Yeah, there's no way.
They're just not going to be as large as the houses. After finishing the green building, I started working on a big flag to fly over the orchard. It's an enlarged version of this banner I came up with to represent the city.
It
The
actually
design
is.
matches the carpet in the tower, but it also represents this obelisk I'm planning on building in the temple. On day
Like
64,
Mongo
I started
said,
building an extra big version of the
GG's,
flags on
man.
the east and the west
Good
sides of the temple.
game.
I tried to texture them as much as
GG's,
possible to make them
man.
look like worn fabric and
GG's,
avoid them